Morning, Jacob.
Good
It's another
morning,
day.
Scott. Another day, another nickel.
So we're gonna take a break from talking about our online jewelry store because we have to put a pause on that for now. And we're gonna be armchair economists this morning. We're gonna talk about recession, what that means. Like, are we in a recession? Because the technical definition of a recession, if you ask an economist, is two consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth. That means a quarter is 3 months. So Q1, January, February, March, and then Q2 was April, May, June. Those two
Mhm.
quarters we saw retraction, negative GDP growth. So technically we were in a recession, but then, people are telling us, no, we really aren't. And in fact, Q3, we inched up on GDP. So technically we're sort of out for at the moment. But,
Mm.
all that aside, we can only talk about what our experiences are and what we know about this and what's going on, what we see. So what are you seeing as a consumer and as a small business owner over there in NOLA? Are you seeing a slowdown compared to last year? And then also, how do things compare now? Because we are in the holiday season compared to the
Yeah.
summertime. Have things picked up since the summertime?
They have slowed down since summertime.
Really?
Um, what's funny you bring this up is I just talked with so I'm talking with John, who has been at that store downstairs for 15 years now. And just last week we ended up talking about the recession and all these things. And he said, man, down here in the shop, we have had no slowdown of purchasing, period, like in the past year or two.
Mm-hmm.
And everything's just been kind of the same. And I said, well, what about, during these recessions or whatever? He's like, I've never had really he goes, he's not like raking in dollars and dollars, right? But he says he's never really had slow seasons outside of the typical summer slowdown in jewelry.
It's been pretty
Um,
stable.
I don't know if it's because his location. I don't know if it's because he's got a loyal customer base. I can't really dive into that, but I know from his perspective, he says he hasn't really experienced that. He says
Mm-hmm.
when you look on the news and you hear a recession and everyone's freaking out and there's not going to spend as much, he says I personally never experienced that with the shop. He says I feel like
15
people
years?
continue to spend. Um, in my experience, I think it's a little different and harder to gauge because of how young the custom, like I've only been doing the custom jewelry stuff for about a year now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, with Jacob Mark Jewelers, right? Um, so it's always been slow, you know.
Yeah.
But
Well,
anything that's any
well,
kind of growth was,
In John's store has traffic's always been consistent, or is it
yeah,
more
that's what he
that?
said. That's what he said. Yeah, last week we were talking about this, and he said, he even asked, he says, you hear during the recession people stop buying, but do you think that's like in middle America, or do you think it's in like the bigger places like California, New York, where um, cuts in pay or whatever like have a lot bigger implications because of cost of living? And he's asking me all these great questions that I mean, obviously I don't have the answer for, but he says I just never experienced people in those recessions here that
Mhm.
cut back on their spending. I feel like they still end up spending.
Well, I think it
And
seems
I
like
said, I think it's an interesting point.
whoever John is, he has a pretty good customer base because when I
Mm,
talk to jewelers, even prior to COVID, and we've talked about
mm,
this, they've been seeing slowdowns, in jewelry sales.
mm.
And so, regardless of the recession, regardless of the pandemic, it's been like that for a lot of jewelers. So
Yeah,
maybe, he has a very good customer base and he's created a moat for himself.
yeah.
But I can't imagine that he had the same kind of traffic during COVID because he must have closed down, right? Or did he operate through COVID?
I think they operated because I think I mean, obviously I was living out there with you, but from my understanding, New Orleans was largely still open.
Uh,
I'm in a group with thousands of jewelers across the nation of all sizes.
mhm.
And it's so interesting. Last week there was a post of after 40 years of business, we have to shut down, you know? And if I see those a good bit. probably once every couple months. You get those posts. In the comments, people will start having discussions of half of the comments are, yeah, same thing's happening to us. We're considering shutting down. The other half is we've been thriving better than ever, you know?
Sure.
So it's just kind of I guess all to say, I don't know. I don't know if it is always across the board, or I don't know if there's a lot of different variables that could affect it. Because yeah, I see also people post it around the same time, once every couple months.
Yeah.
We're having a record year. We're having, you know, and it's like,
I think your audience
you know,
has an effect, has an impact on that. Your price range determines your audience, style of jewelry, all those things, right? And
great point.
recessions, yeah, it does affect different people differently.
Yeah.
And but here's what I've observed here because I'm in Southern California, and it tends to be a more affluent area. So I
Hmm.
don't sell specifically to Southern California. We're national, right? Or
Hmm.
that. But what I've observed is definitely online sales are down because when I talk to other business
Hmm.
owners, especially those who are e-com, it's some have shut down, and in fact, USPS does gets used a lot, for small businesses. And we used to go to that business mail, the BME, the business mail entry unit right here, and we're located like across the street from there, right? So we walk over and make our drops. Did you ever used to make drops?
Yeah, yeah.
So
There's
remember
always,
they had those bins,
yeah,
and by October, late October, November, they'd have like a bunch of them all day, and
yeah,
they'd be packed.
yep.
Well, right now in middle of November, there's one bin and it's empty. And there's one guy there, and I talked to him the other day. Man, like in previous years, the past 3 years, we've been seeing these bins, full, overflowing, and we've seen like six out at one time, and you come any time of day, it's full. He's like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't mind it because, and in his mind, it's like he probably has job security. um,
That's true.
but
It's probably
um,
like less work for me.
yeah, he says, yeah, it is strange, and but he expects it to pick up by when the closer we get to Black Friday, and that'll be coming up. So we'll see, but it's not good compared to previous years for sure in that respect. Shipping is
Mm.
down, but I'm wondering if all that traffic has kind of translated to brick and mortar. And so as I go around, so I go to places like the Irvine Spectrum, right? And that's a place that's always hopping, like, but traffic's down there too. I can actually find parking
Wow.
there and walk around, and it's not that crowded. So that could be
Wow.
an indicator of how things are as well. There are pockets that are doing well, and so it just depends. And then there are pockets,
Yeah.
especially if you're in tech up north here, people they're having massive layoffs, right? You just
Hmm.
you heard about what happened with Twitter. They had laid
Yeah.
off like half their workforce after Elon Musk took over. They were burning like $4 million in cash every day. They didn't have too much runway left, so they had to do that. I get it. Um, but it's I don't know what the implications are for the country as a whole, but I think you'll always find pockets that do well. When I look back, because I think we have a little bit of an age difference, so I've been through maybe 5 recessions, but the ones I remember, I only remember really the one after 9/11 because I was
Mm.
working at that time, and following that it was sluggish, but I had a job, didn't affect me as much. But one thing I do remember is following that time, prices on a lot of things just dropped. you know
Mm.
what's weird about right now is that prices on things are high. And
Right.
inflation during that time, they started this whole trend of cutting interest rates and things like that. And so which eventually led to the whole housing market boom, right? And
Hmm.
crash subsequently. But right now it's weird because and I've heard that this sort of thing has happened in the 70s, right? Um, stagflation period, right? Where the
Right.
economy is stagnant or not growing, but we're experiencing inflation. And it's a strange thing because inflation usually is an indicator of a strong economic motor. But
Right.
I'm not 100% confident. And if you ask other business owners and people, they're not confident about this economy right now.
Yeah.
So anyway, I personally, the things I'm seeing out there is that, people aren't spending as much. The summer was a little bit better, for revival, but then um, even though October was slow, I think November was starting to slowly pick up, and that's probably due to holiday and also running holiday sales early. Retailers like Target and Walmart are a good indicator of what's going on. Like if they say they have too much inventory and they have to slash prices early, because Target started running Black Friday deals in October.
Yeah.
And so did even
For
Amazon. Mhm.
no, I was just gonna say, for what it's worth, Rolex sent out a mass memo, basically. I think it was a few weeks ago now,
Mhm.
saying that they're gonna shut down basically all of their factory workers and assemblers. It was, I think, through November. It was way longer than 4 months. I think it's this right, like right now, November through, I want to say it was March or May next year,
Wow, that for that long.
for a long time. So I was like, okay, what are they seeing on the horizon?
Well, they're a
Uh,
luxury retailers, so well, oftentimes that's the first thing that goes, right? And then people really start spending on just necessities. And I think, this people there are those people that are waiting for the Black Friday deals, and I think, they're going to shop for necessities, things like home appliances, maybe even TVs if that's a necessity. And I don't know, snow blowers, if you live in cold areas.
yeah,
But I don't know, a lot of the luxury items they might not be spending as much on.
yeah,
And jewelry is one of those things, right? So
yeah, absolutely.
we'll have to see. I think
Um,
what you shared about Rolex is a good lead indicator. And in fact, we talked about this before, just in private, about cycles in jewelry and trends.
mhm,
Where I just remember the Great Recession following that, the housing crisis and all that.
mhm,
People shifted to you know less wearing less shiny bling, right?
mhm.
And less of the luxury brands, and people were really talking about how to save money and things like that and being smart with their
Yeah,
money. And it was almost frowned upon if you were a little too flashy, right? For a while.
yeah,
Um, and that impacts the buying trends for jewelry. Here's my mindset as a consumer. I feel like at this moment I'm overpaying for everything, right? That's how it feels. Even food, basically inside
absolutely.
food. So that's why a lot of people, if they're like me, they're probably wanting to save their money until we get inflation under control.
Yep,
Right?
yep.
And I mean, the housing market is seeing that too. I think there's a huge slowdown in home buying, and that's going to go for a while because it's going to be exacerbated by interest rates being high. So,
Yeah.
but how that affects us small business people, I think we just need to be smarter and selective
Mhm.
with what we're offering um,
Yeah.
in this economy. And what also a trend that I see happens after a recession is a lot of people, especially those who get laid off, they take that opportunity to start a new business. So you're going to start seeing people, and when you start a new business, I think you tend to be a little more shrewd and tight and smart with your money. And so those practices that help you start building your business when the times are tough, if you can
Mhm.
continue to operate that way over the long haul, like those are the kinds of businesses that last, when the
Yeah.
cycle comes
I
up. But then
agree.
those of us who just kind of like let our guard down once things get better, and don't continue to practice those things,
Yeah.
we get hit hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Anyway, so you're not doing anything specific to plan ahead.
The to be and once again, because I'm so small, it's like it sometimes feels like a, well, what can you do kind of thing. One thing I was gonna aggressively do that I'm probably gonna pull back largely on is inventory buying.
Yes.
So I was preparing from now through like February to start now putting some funds away to um go and make a big inventory buy,
Mhm.
so that when guys come, I can have a lot to show them. Um, with how things may be headed, I'm probably gonna next February, I'm probably gonna just be watching and seeing where things are headed instead of buying stuff, you know.
Mhm.
Um, so I'm gonna probably, that's gonna be a big adjustment because my game plan was, all right, we're gonna buy a lot of inventory next year and start showing it all off. Well, that could put me in a big hole, you know.
Yeah. Well, you're lucky
And
because there's a glutton of inventory out there right now because of during the pandemic, people were buying, 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 and so there was a shortage, and then all these suppliers and manufacturers were building up inventory, and now we're stuck
yeah,
with a glut of inventory, and so some of that should help bring prices down, even though we haven't seen
yeah,
that quite yet. I mean, we're seeing some of that in retail and places like that.
I get that.
But anyway, yeah, that's you know, uh, Thanksgiving's coming up, so we'll talk next about what we're doing for Black Friday, Cyber Monday, if you haven't
Yeah.
started doing anything already. But I'm going to continue talking about Julesy later. But just to give you an update, we did get the jewelry the same day we talked
Oh,
last.
nice.
I ended up getting it, but we still are waiting on the packaging. That's been slow,
Mm,
but I think we'll still meet our December target, our end of November target to launch.
nice. Okay.
Yeah, but
That's cool. I'm excited for
talk to you
that
again about that soon. So,
for sure.
but let's ask people at the end of this again to like and subscribe. Our next one, we have to ask them to like and subscribe at the beginning.
Yes, definitely.
We still don't have much of an audience anyway, but we got to keep trying, right?
That's
All
right.
right, talk to you again.